Hey everyone, it's Dylan with CT Aquatics, and today we're talking about consistency. In the last video, we cleaned this tank, and I went over the daily and weekly maintenance that I perform on a tank. Not just this tank, but every single tank that I have. In today's video, I'd like to talk about how important it is to do that on a weekly basis and how it's so important to be consistent with your maintenance. Consistency is so important in a tank like this because we're not just caring for animals, but we're keeping an entire ecosystem alive. By being consistent with your feeding and your water changes and all other maintenance, it allows the ecosystem to balance itself out. It gets used to the schedule that you have, essentially, and balances out to a point where you can keep some more difficult organisms in your system after a certain period of time. Generally, the first 4 months of a tank is going to be the worst period, as that is when you go through the ugly phase. This tank is still relatively new, and I am experiencing a bit of the ugly phase now, as I am getting some hair algae, or potentially even bryopsis, growing on this rock in the corner over here. But I know that if I stay consistent with this, and make sure that there's a healthy cleanup crew, eventually this hair algae will go away. After the first 4 months, the ugly phase should start to subside, as long as you're consistent in maintenance and trying to remove anything that doesn't look so great in the tank. And the next big milestone is the 1 year mark. At the 1 year mark, usually the tank has completely stabilized. Again, as long as you've been consistent. At this point, you can start to add some more difficult fish and coral. Stuff like wild-caught mandarin gobies are something that you could potentially start adding after the year point, because usually at that point, you should have a healthy population of microfauna and copepods. It is very important to stay consistent with the water changes. Doing 10 to 20% weekly, in my opinion, is the best option. The reason for this is the math shows that if you stay on top of a 10 to 20% water change every week, within 3 to 4 months, your nitrate and phosphate levels should completely stabilize in the tank. This also means that that's when the tank starts to balance out. It starts to stay more consistent, and that's when some organisms like more difficult to keep coral may begin to be introduced into the system. Other than water changes, the other most important thing to stay consistent on is feeding. Nutrient in to nutrient out. Nutrient in is the amount of food that you put in on a daily or weekly basis, and nutrient out of the tank is doing your water change. That is how you can keep the system stable. So, for that, I like to feed pellets once every single day. I like to feed a little bit of frozen every day. And if the system has fish that are herbivores, I like to add nori seaweed strips in 2 to 3 times a week. Again, it is important to stay consistent with the nutrients going into the tank, meaning the amount that you feed every day, so that you don't have any nutrient spikes. With that being said, doing those weekly water changes again is super important in order to make sure that the nutrients never get too high. Now I know I've hammered that into the ground, that feeding and water changes and being consistent on those is so important. But really, that is the key to a happy and healthy ecosystem. If you can maintain those two things, for the most part, your system should do very well over time. Now, there are some other little tips and tricks that I'll hopefully give out along the way. But again, as long as you can follow those two things and stay consistent with your system will clean itself up and give you some nice, happy, healthy results. So there you go. We've talked about how consistency in maintenance and care is so important in keeping a saltwater fish tank, and how that can be the main key to success. Hope you enjoyed what you saw, and remember, If you enjoy our content, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications to join us on our journey through the sea. Or drop a comment below and let us know what you thought of the video. Thanks for watching.